Hello, everyone. My name is Murli, and this is the starting of a very informal CDK series that has been on my mind for quite some time now. So, a bit about me. I'm a senior DevOps engineer, and I used to work with Amazon in AWS Premium support. I was working in the DevOps space, so I was dealing with a lot of CloudFormation CDK cases. So this is the first video of the series, and I want to keep this very short. And what I'll be doing is that I'll be deploying a sample app or a stack using CDK, and while doing so, I'll also be going through um, you know some of the features of CDK like bootstrapping, constructs, and things like that. So let's get started. So we'll start with what CDK is. So CDK is actually a IAC framework, and it actually helps you define your infrastructure purely as code. So compared to Terraform or CloudFormation, where you will be writing your infrastructure as like HCL or YAML or JSON files, in CDK, you'll be defining your infrastructure purely as code. So you will be defining your infrastructure in TypeScript, Python, JavaScript, or .NET that you're already familiar with. And on top of that, you'll also get the advantages that you get with programming languages like loops, condition statements, and others. There are also variants of CDK like CDK Kits and CDK Terraform, which actually synthesizes into either Terraform HCL code or like YAML Kubernetes manifest. The normal CDK would actually synthesize into CloudFormation templates. So, what is the difference between CDK and CloudFormation? In CloudFormation, you'd be basically defining all the resources in YAML format or a JSON format. Like you'll be going through the documentation, trying to find out the properties of each resource, and then you'll be defining them as per your org standards or like as per your requirements. But compare that with CDK. In CDK, like you have constructs. So constructs are abstractions of these CloudFormation resources. It can abstract one resource, it can abstract multiple resources, it could be an abstraction of a common pattern also. CDK also addresses most of the shortcomings in CloudFormation. For example, if you want to invalidate a cache in your CloudFront after a CloudFormation deployment, what you would do is you would be writing a custom resource. But in CDK, that custom resource is actually readily available. So you just have to write or include this piece of code, and then CDK would synthesize into a custom resource and does the job for you. CDK also helps you reuse modules and distribute them. Compare that with CloudFormation. Like you'll be creating CloudFormation modules, and then to distribute that, it's a overhead, to be honest. But in CDK, you can write your own constructs and publish them as artifacts like npm packages or Python packages, which is much more easier as compared to CloudFormation. So let's get started and create a sample CDK project. So I've already installed Node, CDK CLI, and then I also have AWS CLI setup. These are the prerequisites to create and manage CDK stacks locally. So I'll switch to my terminal. Yeah, I'll create a sample project where creator S3, creating a folder, and inside this folder to initialize a CDK app, we'll use the command CDK init, and I'll be using the language as TypeScript mainly because of the excellent documentation for CDK TypeScript. In Python, I find it really difficult to navigate and then find the information that I need. So this would actually initialize a boilerplate app. Inside that, you'll have a stack, and then you'll have also have a SQSQ. Let's switch to Visual Studio Code. Okay, so this is the repository structure that you would get whenever you initialize an app. Like you'll have a bin, you'll have a lib, you'll have a test folder which you can use for like unit testing. We won't be going through that in this video. And you'll also have a cdk.json file. So this is where the context would be defined. We'll also go through that in a later video. You'll have a package.json. This is where you define the dependencies and things. You'll have the readme, a very small readme file. And let's go to the stack file. this is where you actually define your resources. Let's take a look into the s3.ts under the bin. So this is the place where your stacks would be defined. So you can see that there is one instantiation of the S3 stack, which is under lib. So essentially, this would synthesize into one S3 stack. But if you want multiple copies of the same stack, you can go through a loop, or like you can define the same thing once again. This is a construct in CDK. It has three things. Like one is the scope, the identifier, and the prop. So this would be the general structure for all of the constructs in CDK. Let's talk about the constructs and levels of constructs in CDK. So what you see here, I've actually defined two resources. Both are same, both are SQS queues, but one of them actually has um, the name CFNQ and another one just Q. Um, the CFNQ that you see here is the L1 construct, which is actually a one-to-one mapping with the CloudFormation resource SQS colon colon Q. So for L1 resources in CDK, whatever you define is what you get. For example, like if you define queue name at the after the synthesis, you'll be getting only the queue name in the resource. At the same time, for the L2 resource, like these have like added what do you say properties and things that are already defined in the source code of CDK. Like these would be actually best practices and other things. That's the difference. For example, in the L2 S3 bucket, you have a property called auto delete objects. So what that does is like it'll automatically delete all the objects in your S3 bucket before deletion so that you don't get the bucket not empty error during the stack deletion. So that's what you get with L2 constructs. Um, let's try CDK synth with this. So synthesis would actually convert your code to a CloudFormation template. So this CloudFormation template would be available under cdk.out folder. So you can see that there's a assets JSON file and the template JSON file. And if you see, there is our L1 queue as well as the L2 queue that we defined. Both of them would actually result to the same CloudFormation resource. But if you see the properties of both of them, the L1 has the queue name that we defined as well as the L2 has only the visibility that we defined. So that's the difference. So now let's move on to the deployment. So before deploying this particular stack, like there is a bootstrap process. So in CDK, like you'll have to bootstrap to deploy this particular stack. There are other ways to deploy without bootstrapping also, like there's a bootstrap less synthesizer. But today we'll be going to what bootstrap is and like how that works. So we'll um, do the bootstrapping. So the command is CDK bootstrap, and then I'll provide the account ID and the region that I want to bootstrap. This would actually deploy a CloudFormation stack. So essentially, Bootstrap is a one-time process, and once you bootstrap, like you just have to update and then keep it up to date. So some of the features, like the like if there is a like update to the Bootstrap template or things like that, then you'd have to run Bootstrap again. But apart from that, like there's no need to update the Bootstrap or like run this particular command during every deployment. So we'll switch over to the console and then we'll see what is the stack that's been deployed. So if you see the stacks in the US West 2 region, you can see a stack named CDK Toolkit being deployed. And if I see the resources inside that, so there'll be a bunch of roles that will be deployed. So every role has its own purpose so that the permissions are scoped down. So there's a lookup role which will be used to look up resources in your account. Say, like if you want to reference an existing VPC in your stack, like CDK would be assuming this particular role, and then it'll be querying your account for the VPCs that are present in that particular region. Image publishing is actually used to publish ECR images. File publishing is actually used to upload objects to S3. Deployment action role would be used to initiate the deployment. The CloudFormation execution role is actually the service role for CloudFormation that will be passed along. You do have the option to customize this whole bootstrap, like you'll get the template and then you'll be able to customize this as per your org standards. But I have actually deployed the default version which works well for most of the use cases. And there's also a S3 bucket and an ECR repository. Like this ECR repository would be used to store container images, and S3 bucket would actually be used to store your template files like your Lambda function zip, like code zips on all the assets that you want to refer. Like if you can actually refer to any local asset, that would actually be packaged as a zip file and then uploaded to this particular S3 bucket, the staging bucket. So that is the use of this whole CDK toolkit stack and the bootstrap process. So in a sense, like CDK would bootstrap your account so that CDK can deploy itself. So yeah, that's the main aim of this particular bootstrap. So we'll switch back um, to the VS Code and we'll see that the bootstrap has been completed. So account is bootstrap, the particular region is bootstrap. So if you want to deploy it in another region, like you'll have to bootstrap that region also. Otherwise, like you'll face an error saying that region is not bootstrapped. So by default, if I deploy this, this would actually go to the default region configured in my CLI, the AWS CLI. So I've configured US West 2. So if I do a CDK deploy, this would actually go to the US West 2 region. Like it'll synthesize and then it'll deploy a stack. So stack would actually have this name, S3 stack. So we can see that it has published the template. So now in that staging bucket, this particular template would be present. So that is the like asset publishing stage, and it'll be using that file publishing role to publish this particular template, and then it'll be making the CD CloudFormation API calls, because CloudFormation can't reference your local files, right? So it'll be getting that particular S3 link, and then it'll be using the CloudFormation create stack API call. And now we can see that the stack is actually being created with two SQS queues. In the meantime, there's also one more asset file here, right? So if you can see this, um, this actually contains the list of objects or the assets to publish before creating the stack. So our particular example stack is very simple. Like it has only one, two SQS queues. So we only need to publish this particular template. And say you have other like local assets like Lambda's source code or um, ECS container images and all. So all these would be aggregated by CDK and it'll keep it in a like file like this assets.json. And before deploying the actual stack itself, like it'll publish this assets to your account. So after publishing, it'll get the S3 links and the ECR URLs, and then it'll be substituting in your template, and then it'll be doing a deploy. So we'll see the account now, and we'll see what has been deployed. Yeah, so we do have the S3 stack here, and then inside the S3 stack we have two resources. So one is the L1 queue and another one is the L2 SQS queue. And we also have a resource called CDK metadata. This is just to track, this is completely optional. You can disable this using a flag. This is not needed at all. So yep. And now we can see that there are two queues being created in our account. Now we'll switch back to VS Code and say I want to deploy another stack with the same template. So all I have to do is I'll have to define this once again. And yep. So if I do S3 stack 2 and then do a CDK deploy, okay, after all, there are two stacks present. Yep. Now it's deploying the S3 stack 2. The S3 stack 1 didn't have any changes, so it said no changes. Now it's creating the second stack. Most probably this would fail because we have a named resource which is the test queue. So if I try to create the test queue once again, this would actually fail. Let's see. Right, so this failed. But I think you have an idea of how to like create the same copy of stack and then deploy it. So the process is very straightforward in CDK. You get all the advantages that you would get with a programming language. So that's the main advantage. So we'll be diving deep into more features of CDK in upcoming videos. Yep. So stay tuned, subscribe to the channel. Thanks a lot for watching.